In a world of modern investment complexities, the allure of collectibles as an investment has become a hot-button topic of late among collector communities and in financial circles as well. In particular, action figures as an investment has become a surprisingly controversial topic as of late. Before you go and dump your entire savings into a pallet of Marvel Legends, hold up, take a breath, and watch this video because there's a lot of shortcomings in action figure investing that need to be discussed lest you end up like Clark Griswold leaving the casino on Christmas vacation, broke, until Papa Giorgio saves the day. What's up everybody, my name is Matt, often called Big Nerdy. Together we are the NWO, the Nerd World Order, and this is Nerdzoic. We're filming early today, so I got my coffee. I hope everybody's in a good mood because we got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot of chatter of late about all the Hasbro reprints that are going on. So these are figures that are years old, are going for crazy money on the secondary market, and then boom, Hasbro starts reprinting them. I should know, I broke the news. While 95% of the toy world was shocked by this, there was a good 5% that were also straight up pissed. I was really surprised to see the number of people who were like, oh no, my investment's ruined, or the other ones who were like, man, I just paid $100 for that. And while I get it, it kind of sucks to see something come out for $20 that you just paid $100 for. That's the game, folks. Since I've been asked for years about my thoughts on toys and action figures as an investment, I think the time with this now upon us has finally come for me to address it, so buckle up, buckaroos. This is a big subject, and while the answer is somewhat simple, it does require a bit of explanation. That said, I know some of us have the attention span of a gnat, so I'm gonna give you a TLDR that is so easy a caveman could understand it. Modern investing, bad, most of the time. Vintage investing, good, also most of the time. Comic books, better investment than toys, again most of the time. So yeah, all of this is most of the time, so let's dig into it more. First off, modern investing is not a great idea, okay? I'm just gonna say it, this isn't investing, it's speculating. If you're trying to get rich and secure retirement by buying up cases of Black Series figures and waiting, I got a bridge to sell you. Now, if you're just buying some extras for fun and hoping to flip them in the future to fund future toy purchases, that's great. You gotta fund the hobby somehow. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I talk so much about secondary market pricing, because that is how we learn to be able to make that kind of money to be able to continue to fund our hobby. Just do not be a scalper. Do not scalp. Scalping bad. As far as this whole modern toy investing thing goes, here's the bottom line. It's risky and it's volatile. As a market, modern toys are easily impacted by manufacturer decisions, as they're not making investment commodities here. They're making durable goods that are supposed to be used. What I'm talking about here is reruns. We never know when they're gonna do a rerun. We also never know how big the print size is gonna be. We're just really guessing. Like you've heard me talk about it before, really it's a hypothesis. I don't know for sure, I'm not in the factory counting them. How popular a figure is will not make it worth more if they print 10 zillion copies. Just look at the people who are flipping out about the Star Wars reruns ruining their investment. They gamble by paying high, and what does Qui-Gon say about gambling?
Whenever you gamble, my friend, eventually you lose.
Another pitfall of modern collecting is the rise of the mitten box collector. It's flooded the market with a supply of new inventory, so finding something gem mint in package is not as hard as it was way back when to collect. Meanwhile, gem mint sealed N64 games from the same era as the Power of the First Force 2 toys are way less common because most people opened them and did not buy a video game to keep in the box and another one to play. That's why some electronics are going crazy. A Generation 1 sealed iPhone that was graded recently sold for almost $200,000. If you think about it, it makes sense. The reason vintage toys are so expensive is because nobody thought that they were going to be a collectible down the line, so a lot of people, almost everybody, opened them. Meanwhile, nobody thought that the latest cell phone was going to be a collectible down the line, so people were like, okay, cool, I gotta open this iPhone and use it. Nobody was like, I'm gonna buy one that keeps sealed, except the guy who did. It's all about supply and demand. There are exceptions to these points though with modern releases. For example, numbered releases, single prints like when they did the first edition Black Series, and prototypes can be a completely different story for long-term investing. The same goes for figures that are definitely never going to get made again, like Cara Dune. That one's going to continue to go up in value. Same goes for something like Slave Leia, Huttslayer Leia. If you got those in boxes, get them graded because they're not making another Huttslayer Leia. I didn't do it again, I didn't say it again. Which brings us to vintage, and vintage has a clear advantage here. There's less of it in good condition, kind of like we just talked about with the people buying things to keep in the box. It just didn't happen as much back then. Add to that, there is a deep nostalgic and emotional value that comes with vintage action figures. It evokes a powerful sense of nostalgia and emotional resonance. For me, whenever I see things from like the early 90s, that really brings back the nostalgia for me. me. Like when I see pictures of like malls from the early 90s or stores like Suncoast and stuff, I get that feeling and it's like, man, I wish I could go back to that time. And people buy these things often because it brings them back to that. Now, historically, vintage figures have risen in value over time, especially if they're historically significant as well as have cultural relevancy. Now, reproductions can be made, but you don't really have to worry about things like reprints when you invest in vintage, unless you're worried about things like the retro figures, which are reproductions. But there's no straight up reprints that are gonna get you caught off guard. The game changer to all of this is grading. Grading services play a pivotal role in authenticating the condition and legitimacy of action figures and provide confidence that what you have is what you think and not a fugazi.
Is you should give it to somebody that don't know any better, because that's a fugazi.
Graded figures are great because it gives you a verification of its legitimacy, that it's not a knockoff. It also verifies that it's complete and that the condition is what it says it is. Obviously, higher graded items often command premium prices due to their pristine state. This is great because it establishes a standardized system, which creates transparency in a vast marketplace so buyers and sellers can make informed decisions. While this is a toy investing video, I think it's important to talk about comics, because comics are the prime investment choice here. If you're going to invest in collectibles, I personally think comics are the way to go. They have a high historical significance. They tell stories of their time, they reflect societal values and changes, which adds to their appeal, making them literal artifacts of cultural history. They also have global appeal. Nowhere on earth is there somebody who's not going to be like, who's Spider-Man? Who's Batman? Simply put, comics transcend language and culture. If the United States is gone tomorrow, someone in another country is going to be like, oh my god, is that Amazing Fantasy 15? Because they know. In comics, the acceptance and prevalence of grading is also much higher. Personally, I've always seen CGC and PSA as more reputable than AFA, which is part of the CGA umbrella, which grades a ton of different collectibles, so they're not a specialist in anything, even though they have these different companies under their umbrella. Now, there's no reason for that, but it's my personal bias. This could be based on their advertising, it could just be based on familiarity, who knows? But talking to others, it feels like there's many other people that share this sentiment about AFA. Just look at all the third-party tools out there for graded comics, from Cover Price to Go Collect to CLZ to Key Collector, the list is endless. It's very difficult to find any collector tools for graded toys. I also hate the fact that graded toys do not display very well. Sure, they're in acrylic cases, but half the time, because I think you're allowed to decide where the label goes, people put it underneath, and that sucks. The label is part of the display. I wish there was some services for this, because I love playing with grading service websites and looking at like the difference in value as you go down in condition, and it can get pretty crazy. For example, the 90s, which is often considered the time when comics from that era became completely worthless as the comic collecting bubble burst, well, there's still some really surprisingly valuable comics from that era that you might even have sitting in a long box in your mom's attic somewhere. In fact, check out this video here to find out if you got something good that's just collecting dust. And remember, you gotta get old, you don't have to grow up, just be cool and stay nerdy. Later.